Sunday afternoon, for the first time in 18 years, the Saints will unveil a new offense. For 6 months now, Klint Kubiak has been installing his scheme, and we saw very little of it in the preseason. There's great optimism about what the Saints defense can do, and great mystery on offense.
Here we go.
Meanwhile, the Carolina Panthers are starting over again. They're the worst team in the NFL over the last 5 seasons. It's an opportunity for the Saints to start fast and with a schedule that gets much tougher quickly. It's an opportunity they must seize.
From WWL Sports, this is a Black and Gold special.
This week, CBS Sports had its 6 national NFL writers make their season predictions. None of those 6 had the Saints making the playoffs. All 6 had them finishing 3rd or 4th in the NFC South, and that is about where the national expectations are for the Saints. I'm Doug Mouton. Welcome to our Black and Gold season opening special. Ricardo LeCompte and Seth Lewis join me to break down the opener, and we will start with Ricardo at the Saints facility in Metairie. Ricardo, if the Saints are going to surprise their critics, they have to be better than the Panthers, right?
Yeah, Doug, and they should be. Carolina won just 2 games last season, and they have a first-year head coach in Dave Canales. Dennis Allen enters his 3rd season with the Black and Gold, and even though he's won his first 2 season openers as head coach, he hasn't ended the season with the playoffs. The pressure is mounting to change that, and he needs this offensive overhaul this offseason to produce. They've waited all summer. Now the Saints can finally unleash their new offense. First-year offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak installing a system that's rooted in successful offenses run by his dad, Gary, and head coaching great Mike Shanahan. The 49ers used a similar scheme on their way to a Super Bowl appearance last season. Kubiak served as a passing game specialist on that staff.
You look at what they've been able to produce, it's exciting. So, I think that's the best tell of what's to come in the future. You see what they've been able to do at other places, and then, it stood true. So hopefully we do the same here.
It's good football, and it's winning football, and that's what excites me the most.
Kubiak's system should help the Saints' run game that ranked 21st in the NFL in 2023. But New Orleans will roll out an offensive line featuring 3 new starters.
They've been playing really well, working hard, doing their jobs in OTAs, training camp, been locked into everything, little details, and I'm excited. I'm excited for them too.
The new offense should also elevate Derek Carr's play. The second-year quarterback is on his 3rd OC in 3 seasons. But Carr says he and Kubiak are in sync.
We trust each other, so he trusts me to do some things, and I just stay in that yard that so he's comfortable, and I trust him to let me know when it's time, and then deliver for him. That's the big thing for us as players.
While the Saints debut a new offense, they'll show off a defense that could be elite. New Orleans addressed its pass rushing deficiency by adding defensive end Chase Young. It got better at linebacker after signing Willie Gay. And a number of returning veterans have that urgency to win now.
It's a good place to be in. I think we got phenomenal talent on the team. I think we have great leaders on the team. I think we have great players on this team. And all we have to do is realize our greater potential and go capitalize.
We're going to play hard. We're going to play fast. We're going to play physical. We're not into the business of gimmies. So we're going to try to challenge everything as much as we can, and we're going to play smart. And I think we've done that.
Allen's defense finished last season ranked in the top 10 against the pass and scoring defense, and they also finished tied for 3rd in the league in turnover margin. This defense may have to carry this team early on during a difficult 4-game stretch after the Panthers, at least until the offense begins to click, Doug.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. But the good news on the injury front for the Saints, the offense will open the season healthy. That's huge. They're not deep on offense. The one key player on defense who may or may not play Sunday afternoon is defensive tackle Colin Saunders. He's now wearing number 50. Saunders has not practiced the last 2 days. He's got a calf injury. The Saints do have other options at that position. It's not critical that he plays, but they could use him. The other good news, Marshawn Lattimore is off the injury report report altogether. He was a full participant today. Willie Gay is a guy to watch. He was limited again today. A new offense and a potentially better defense. That's where we start with Ross Jackson of the Locked On Saints podcast. We caught up with Ross this afternoon at the Saints facility. All right, Ross, it's a mystery exactly what we're going to see out of this offense. How would you describe what you think you're going to see out of the Saints offense Sunday?
Yeah, I think the core principles to this New Orleans Saints offense moving forward: motion, play action, run game. Those are going to be the three big things that you're going to be looking for. And in particular, when it comes to the run game, getting outside the tackles, getting towards the perimeter, the sideline, kind of trying to stretch the defense horizontally is going to be the big focus. Will they be able to execute that? We'll see. And it's the first game of the season, so that's going to be a big test.
We saw a little bit of it in one drive of one preseason game, but certainly not much. Who is one player that you would say you think benefits a lot from this new scheme as opposed to what the Saints were running previously?
Yeah, I think one of the easy ones to pick out here is running back Alvin Kamara. This is a system that feels built for his play style, his ability in terms of what he can do through contact balance, his ability to, in terms of what he can do out in space, his ability to avoid tacklers, be elusive, and catch the ball out of the backfield, which is going to be a big emphasis of this offense as well. Just as a quick second, though, I think Taysom Hill is a big one that benefits here, just from strictly being able to be out on the field consistently.
Yeah, no doubt. But look, my guy is Eric McCoy because he's a super athletic center, and this should emphasize the athleticism of the offensive lineman. All right, we have talked so much from training camp to now about Chase Young, but if he is the player we think he might be, he can really change this defense, can he?
And I'll go a step further and say, if he is the player that we think he might be, the Saints are a top 3 defense in 2024. And I think that's what they're trying to get back to. They've been a top 10 defense. They've been around that area here over the course of the past few years, but they're trying to get back to where they were 2017, 2018, 2019, when they were a top 3, top 5 type defense. And if Chase Young brings a little bit more to the pass rush and is able to continue to support in the run game, I think that it's a big, big key to the New Orleans Saints getting back to that area.
Yeah, more with Ross in a minute, including his prediction for Sunday. And Seth Lewis goes inside the train wreck known as the Carolina Panthers. The worst team in the NFL has a new coach again, behind enemy lines, and more ahead on our Black and Gold season opening special. It is hard enough to win in the NFL. Bad ownership makes it nearly impossible. We'll lay out how bad the Panthers ownership is in a minute. But on the field, they're starting over again. Seth Lewis is live in studio with that story. Seth?
Yeah, Doug, if we had money for every time someone said the Panthers are beginning a new era, we'd both be rich by now. But that's the reality again in Charlotte as Dave Canales takes over as head coach. We go behind enemy lines with Julian Council from the Locked On Panthers podcast, who starts with his first impressions of the new man in charge.
Looking at it, Dave Canales, it's interesting to see what he's going to be able to do. He's a guy who spent the bulk of his career in Seattle under Pete Carroll. People have talked to him about being the offensive Pete Carroll, as he has that vibrant, effervescent personality, exudes positivity, and that's something that this organization needs after the dreck of a 2-15 season, dealing with Matt Rule, who was in over his head. I'm very curious to see what he does. The one thing about him, too, is another team in the NFL was all that interested in Dave Canales. The Panthers are the only team that gave him an interview during this past head coaching cycle. He's only had one season as a play caller last year within division in Tampa Bay and was successful with Baker Mayfield, a quarterback who was here in Carolina the year prior and struggled mightily. I'm very curious to see how things work out and if David Tepper, the owner, is willing to be patient with a man who he brought in, hoping that he can save Bryce Young based off of the work he did with Baker last year in Tampa and Geno Smith the year prior in Seattle.
And you mentioned Bryce Young. He enters year 2 as the franchise QB in Carolina. Year 1 was far from smooth, but what have you seen from Young in training camp that's encouraged you entering his sophomore campaign?
I've seen a lot of the off-platform stuff that we saw from him in his 2 seasons as a starting quarterback at Alabama. And that was one of the big things why I felt like last year's coaching staff with Frank Reich at the helm wanted Bryce Young. His ability to be able to do things off schedule, his ability to operate the offense, be accurate, and make those big-time plays. And we saw more of that in training camp. Bryce Young was not able to evade the pass rush last year as he was sacked a franchise record 62 times. And I see a confidence in him. I see a new Bryce Young. I think Dave Canales, the positivity that he brings, and also just the acumen he brings as a quarterback, so dare I say whisperer, that's something I think that's really rubbed up on Bryce since Canales and him paired up together on the practice field.
What do you think would constitute like a successful season for Canales?
Since day one, Dave Canales has talked about getting the football right, not turning the football over, being able to do the fundamental things the Panthers could not do a season ago. I think back to that Week 3 matchup in Seattle. This team had 11 procedural penalties. It's unacceptable, and Frank Reich said it was, but yet they continued on to be a team that could not run the ball, could not protect their quarterback, could not stay disciplined, getting the football right, looking like a competent NFL team. If that means only winning 5 games, so be it. If that means 7, so be it. Looking competent, that would be successful for Dave Canales.
Julian mentioned looking competent as the goal. Las Vegas is betting that this rebuild will take some time, too. The Panthers have the second lowest over-under win total at 5.5 games on FanDuel, which is only better than the Patriots. Doug?
Yeah, looking competent. That's quite a goal. All right, thank you, Seth. Back now to our conversation with Ross Jackson of the Locked On Saints podcast and his game prediction. All right, Ross, the over-under on the Caesar Sportsbook for Panther wins is 5.5 this season. The Saints against teams with 6 wins or less last year were 5-0. They were good at beating the bad teams. Is that something you might expect to continue?
I think so. I think that this is a game that should be handily there for the New Orleans Saints. Even as they're trying to work out the offensive wrinkles and kind of get a hold of what their new system is, the defense alone should be able to help to win this game for New Orleans. If you keep Carolina under 20 points, that should put you in position for your new offense, despite whatever kind of stumbles they might have, to be able to walk away with a win here.
Look, the season is so long, and you can't, certainly this early in the season, you can't put too much pressure on one game. But I'll say this, as hard as this schedule gets, this is a game in Week 1 that you have to get. Am I exaggerating that?
No, I think that's true, because I think this game and then the Atlanta game, right, which is Week 4, that's 2 big divisional games early on. You want to win your division matchups. New Orleans Saints right now have the longest active win streak in opening games over the course of the past few years, 5 straight. If they can continue it to 6, it puts them in a good position because they've got other tough competition in their first 5 games. So getting these division wins right now makes a big difference for them in terms of what their season outlook is by the end.
So what is the difference in this game? What gets the Saints over the hump in this one? And you said it before, you're predicting a Saints win. Right?
Yeah, I am. I think that I'll go back to one of the things that Dennis Allen told us earlier this week, is that it comes down to who adjusts the most. Both of these teams, Carolina and New Orleans, are bringing in something that the other has not seen yet. Even though New Orleans has some familiarity against Bryce Young, he's got a new head coach, coordinator, play caller, and even though they've seen that head coach, coordinator, play caller at a different place, it was with a different quarterback, so all of it is very new. And New Orleans, of course, has the new offensive scheme, so it's going to be all about who sees and adjusts and ends up being able to kind of overcome the differences from what they expected to what they put on the field.
Yeah, now thanks to Ross. Now up next, our predictions and Carolina's problem at the top. David Tepper takes impatient ownership to a new level. Why he's the worst owner in the NFL. Ahead on our Black and Gold season opening special. The Saints open the season with a head coach who definitely has something to prove. I'm not saying Dennis Allen is on the hot seat, but it is definitely warm. Since Tom Benson bought the Saints in 1985, both he and Gale have taken a very measured approach. Tom hired Jim Finks and let him do his job. Gale has taken the same approach with Mickey Loomis. Now, other than Jerry Jones in Dallas, who actually owns the team, Mickey Loomis is the longest tenured GM in the NFL. In fact, only one GM in baseball and 2 in basketball have been with their teams longer than Mickey Loomis, and that is not a bad thing, because here's the opposite. It's Carolina Panthers owner David Tepper, who clearly knows how to run a hedge fund. His net worth is $21 billion. What he does not know how to run is an NFL team. He went viral last season for angrily throwing his drink out of his suite onto fans in Jacksonville. The NFL fined him $300,000. He has quickly become the league's worst owner. Tepper has 6 seasons now as the Panthers owner, so let's go back 6 years before that and compare. From 2012 to 2017, the Carolina Panthers won 58 games. That is tied for the 5th best record in the NFL over that span. They made 4 playoff appearances with Ron Rivera as their head coach. Tepper inherited a really good team. And then in his 6 seasons, yes, they have won 30 31 games. That's tied with the Jets for the worst record in the NFL over that span. Of course, that's 0 playoff appearances. And get this, Dave Canales is his 7th head coach, including interim head coaches. 7 coaches in 7 seasons. It's just ridiculous. Now, maybe Canales can turn things around in Carolina, but as long as that guy is the owner, I would not bet on it. His head coach in 23 lasted 11 games.
If I had my druthers, I'd like to have a coach here for 20 years or 30 years, if I can do that. We just moved on yesterday, and that's that.
That's his answer. That's that. Clearly, he's a man who is not used to answering for his terrible decisions. And by the way, he's on his 3rd general manager now, entering season 7. But the spread on Sunday's game is actually getting smaller. Some had the Saints at 5.5-point favorites. It's now down to 4. That means people are betting Carolina. Seth, you're up first. Who do you like?
Doug, I think the Saints not only win, but they cover the spread, too. This new offensive system in Carolina may fit Bryce Young better, but figuring it out against the Saints defense is a tall task. I could also see it being a big day for another Young in Chase Young. On the flip side, I don't believe the Panthers will be able to generate enough pressure to affect Derek Carr, and it will be a solid debut for Clint Kubiak as the OC. Look out for a big game from Taysom Hill out of the backfield.
Yeah, I like the Saints, too. And look, one thing I didn't mention on that touchscreen, looking up the Panthers' records over the last 6 years, you know who has the best record in the NFC since 2018, the last 6 years? It's the Saints. They're 4th best in the NFL, best in the NFC. I don't think a lot of people would have guessed that. I didn't, but that's just a mathematical fact. Now, I absolutely like the Saints in the opener. I like them giving those 4 points, too. I think the Saints are an average team. I think the Carolina Panthers are not. I think the Saints win at home. Ricardo, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see as an incompetent team of the Panthers as we've seen in the past. I think they'll be a little bit better than we're expecting. I'm not saying they're going to be a great team out there, but at least they're going to be able to put a couple of drives. I think Dave Canales' influence on how Bryce Young runs his offense will be a factor, and he will play better. I think the Saints' defense will still wreak havoc on this Panthers offense. Meanwhile, I think offensively they'll do just enough. There's still many questions on the offensive line. Can it produce? Because it is 3 new starters up front. The run game has got to come through. Alvin Kamara could possibly have a big game. They've got to find some footing in the run game for all that other part of that offense to actually be explosive and expand. I do like them covering the 4. It's going to be a really low-scoring defensive game, kind of the way Dennis Allen likes it.
Yeah, he definitely likes that kind of game. And look, I hope Chase Young does the things in this game that we saw all training camp. He was so much fun to watch. All right, thanks, guys. It's a noon kickoff Sunday in the Caesars Superdome. We're back with more in a minute. Here is one simple stat from the Saints' 2-game sweep of the Carolina Panthers last season. They sacked Bryce Young 8 times, and the Saints now add Chase Young this year. We'll leave you with a few of those sacks. Thanks for watching our Black and Gold season opening special.